love and longing. Back to the grind, it seems, Vernon remarks as he waves over the approaching men. Time enough had gone by and the honeymoon was officially over. Jeth Erla was already in the clearing, just listening to nature. Vernon had set up a more stable little shelter. It was enough to keep him dry, warm and away from bugs with a soft bed. He'd flat out told the kid that the forest was a thinking thing and wanted to talk to him. He just had to listen back to hear it. He spent the 10 minutes following that trying to explain that, no, this wasn't some vague wise man routine, this was very, very literal. The real cherry on top was that the forest itself was amused by his efforts and had outright pat him on the shoulder in consolation once he'd failed to get it across. Still, the kid was thinking, trying to figure out a riddle that isn't there. The revelation to not look for puzzles where there aren't any will help him grow. "Holy crap, man, I'm jealous," one of the soldiers says, arriving, and Vernon grins as he stands up with Miro Noir. "How'd a dork like you rate a princess?" An exotic soldier and sorcerer from beyond the stars? How'd a princess like me rate that?" She returns and there's a pause before some good-natured chuckling moves around. "You guys ready for this? It's a more or less permanent posting. We're making an entire settlement here, mostly by hand and axiom. Much of our lives will be in teaching kids how to understand and appreciate nature, and we get it. Stop trying to talk us out of it," one of the soldiers says before marching to the front and grinning. He's a short one with a bowl cut and glasses. "Hello, Koga. Glad to see we've got our ninjutsu expert on hand. We've got the manuals, but the actual master is always welcome," Vernon says to the man who's already giving him an unimpressed stare. "How is it that after knowing you I've gone from ducking away from my ninja heritage to helping found a ninja village?" Koga Daiki asks, and Vernon shrugs. "You made the suggestion to me when I was talking to everyone on the ship for ideas. I didn't expect you to take me seriously. I was joking." Koga returns and Vernon snorts. "Oh, please, I remember the things you were saying on the way out of cruel space. Didn't you have an entire ninja phase with the cabin fever? That is completely unfair and you know it. I don't know, man. Putting up with an ever-increasing mob of the Koga ninja clan popping out of the vents every 20 minutes until we riveted them shut was pretty unfair in its own right." Vernon returns in an acidic tone, and there's a moment where the tension ratchets up. Then the two men laugh and clasp forearms before shoulder bumping. "Good to see you, you stupid gaijin. So you said something about communicating with the woods and them being literally alive and aware." "I did. Come this way, right under the boughs," Vernon says before putting his hand on the trunk of a nearby tree. "It's really quite simple. Touch the woods and open yourself up, fully and completely. Stop channeling axiom and let it flow in. It's a hell of a thing, a heady experience that's over in a heartbeat." There's a sharp intake of breath all around as the men take turns reaching out to touch the nearest trees and look shocked as things happen. Their stances shift. They each grow more comfortable, more confident, and far more knowing of their surroundings. "That was far too easy. Why are sorcerers rare if it's that simple?" Koga asks, and Vernon smiles before pointedly looking to Miro Noir. "It's our own strength we rely on," she says after a moment. "We don't borrow it from elsewhere, and a Pook's power comes from within. It's much the same for many other races. They draw the power from within themselves." Yes and no. Most people draw their axiom from within, yes, but that just means they're using their own presence as a filter for the axiom they're using. The ambient energies will refill a person as swiftly as they can use it. The trick in sorcery is using external axiom, unfiltered from the outside, something that we've been digging into a lot among the undaunted. What's the latest nickname for our developing axiom style? Wasn't it technomancy? Considering all the crazy stunts the nerds keep pulling out of their bums, I thought it was called rectomancy. There's a swell of laughter as Vernon looks over the crowd to try and find the right man to give the stink eye to. Anyways, everyone link up to the woods. Your training will let you hook up quickly and easily. Once that's done, I'll lead you all to the clearing where we're going to be building. Vernon orders, and more of the men start shuffling in and around the trees. Those that touch the forest go completely still and then move with certainty. "Shay, can we speak?" Koga asks, and Vernon nods. They take a few steps away from the crowd, and at first Koga raises an eyebrow as Miro Noir comes with them before rolling his eyes. You do know that there are very few, if any, actual ninjas left, right? We have copies of the text from both the Iga Ryu and Koga Ryu. You were taught ninjutsu to a level of mastery. Couple that with what the forest has to teach and we can get close, which is what we're aiming for anyways. We can't suddenly recreate the hidden clans. They're gone. They're not coming back. Look, I appreciate that you and the rest of the ship are so in love with that part of my family's history. I find it flattering, but no matter how cool you think it is, we can't remake it. Who said anything about remaking it? We're creating a sanctuary for disaffected non-human men and boys. We're giving them direction, training, and discipline with a ninja paint job. The forest will help. It will help enormously. We're not trying to recreate the spies and messengers of old. We're here to ease the growth of sorcerers in the now. We're just putting them in ninja jammies for a uniform. Okay. So just facilitate what's already happening and add little bits of wisdom. That's a lot more reasonable. Koga mutters, running a hand through his hair. More than that, most likely. I'd not be surprised if your Grand Admiral did not wish for you to see if the sorcerers you train could be recruited into the Undaunted. Miro Noir notes, and Koga slowly turns to look her in the eyes before slowly looking back to Vernon. I see you went for more than looks, Koga remarks. Word of advice? If any woman you meet from here on out introduces herself with a royal title, pay attention and mind your manners, Vernon says, and Koga nods. Well, whatever. The gents here and I are just glad to get off of spaceships and into the wilderness again. We were picked out from those who like camping and are willing to rough it for extended periods. A propensity for working with our hands and a background in martial arts were also parts of this. Right. Well, let's get moving. Does everyone have the go-ahead of the forest? Vernon asks, before looking up at the branches above. Hey, in the back, stop dawdling and touch the trees already. There's some grumbling, but the order is followed and the last few grow very, very quiet. It should not be that easy. Becoming a sorcerer is a sacred, precious thing. How is it so easy? Miro Noir asks, as she looks over the men. Many of them are reaching up to the trees, reaching back. A vibrant curiosity is in the air, as both the woods and the newly minted sorcerers regard each other with an understated awe. There's a lot of things coming together, my dear. The process in which the woods turns a frightened child into a mighty sorcerer is a slower, less obvious form of training than what we underwent. But there is enough there for the woods to accept us, Vernon remarks before grinning. The Empress wants more sorcerers. She just got 100. 101 when Jeth Erla's training is finished. Yes, you mentioned that. Also, there's a kid waiting for us? The woods are keeping him safe, but yes. Now, gentlemen, focus and perform a wood walk to the clearing you can sense within the mountain valleys. Vernon orders, pointing into the woods. My love, you don't mind if I carry you through on a woodsy walk, do you? Not at all. In fact, I'm curious as to how this will work, Miro Noir says, and is gently hugged by her husband, and the world seems to burst like a bubble. It then reshapes with them, leaning against a tree at the edge of a large clearing bisected by a river. From all sides, the soldiers step out of the darkness and into the light. Oh, wow! There's a lot of you. Are you all sorcerers? You're all sorcerers, right? Jeth Erla asks, bouncing around and examining the soldiers, who smile indulgently and show off the tools and supplies they're carrying when he asks. Gentlemen, Welcome to our hidden village. Now, many of you are new to sorcery, so we'll start off easy with sorcerous construction. Vernon explains before stepping away from Mironoir and holds out his hand. There are many, many arts of sorcery. Most well known are wood calling and wood walking. We've all wood walked to this place. To move from any place, the wood touches to any other. By carrying the wood within you, wood walking can be used from anywhere to return to a place of safety. And the wood calling? Is that where sorcerers bring up huge plants and trees that then fight to protect them and drink the war fire of warriors? Jeth Erla asks, and Vernon nods. Yes, it is, but this is a third power. One that is alluded to but rarely directly seen, Vernon says before focusing and clenching his fist. Everyone but Vernon suddenly staggers as the ground underneath them shakes, and with a grinding groan and the sound of falling rocks, a platform of stone rises nearby. Then parts of it collapse to form stairs onto it. Earth-shaping allows the building of mighty castles and towers, the forming great labyrinths and cave systems that can be filled with monsters and, in a pinch, to hurl boulders. At low levels and without much practice, building foundations like this can easily be created. You can also pick up and shatter a stone of almost any size. Vernon explains before reaching down and ripping a boulder larger than himself out of the ground before reducing it to gravel by slamming his other palm into it. Well, that's going to make things easier. Koga can't help but state. Yep, couple this with life molding and we can get ourselves a few houses built in a day. So that's how you were doing things. The shelters you were making were way too sturdy to be normal, but there wasn't anything like rope or nails or glue or anything keeping them together. Jeth Erla realizes as he points to the tiny triangle shelter that he'd been hanging out in at the edge of the clearing. Indeed, we'll be making things with Axiom and with our hands. Doing it with Axiom is an experiment in will, imagination, and skill. With tools, we're doing things with strength, patience, and another form of skill entirely. This is what this village will be all about. Improvement of the self through honest physical effort as well as sheer Axiom power with our own will and with the aid of the wood. This village has begun. I'm watching history, aren't I? Mironoir notes and Vernon turns to smile at her. Something like that. One of the main things about ninja is that you're not trying to grab attention, unless I'm horribly mistaken, Vernon says before turning to Koga, who shakes his head. You have it. Now we'll need more than a bare foundation, you know, Koga says, and Vernon nods. This leads to the fourth of the common sorcerer arts. This one is twofold and is often considered two separate arts. But life molding is both wood shaping and flesh weaving, the alteration of plants and animals, Vernon explains. So we're literally bending the terrain around us to make this village. Why do we even need tools? Koga asks. Because as much as Axiom lets you skip a lot of steps, you still need to know what you're doing. And there are few better ways to understand than to do everything by hand and observe every step of the process. So it's like transmutation then. Yes and no. It's much, much easier, Vernon says before letting the Axiom flow. Several leaves break off of nearby trees to land on the foundation he had raised up. They then instantly grow into towering trees that then shift and mold to form a sturdy multi-tiered house in a Japanese style. Like that. Like that, he says, while bending magic over a barrel and having his way with it. Koga mutters before focusing and making a motion like he's giving someone an uppercut. A small platform erupts from the ground and he frowns. I focus on extreme control and finesse. If I'm using a thimble's worth of Axiom, then you'd be best served to bring out a bucket, Vernon notes with a grin. Hey, where's the door? Jeth Erla asks, walking around the house Vernon built. It slides open. Vernon calls up to him. So the 5 sorcerous arts are 4? Mironoir asks and Vernon nods. Yes, indeed. he says as many of the men start pulling at the axiom and raising foundations from the ground. With a gesture, Vernon forms a bridge over the river. They make life in the wild so very, very easy. There's a reason that no sorcerer in history has left the woods starving and desperate. They may enter them that way, but never leave it as such. It's just a pity that I won't be so welcome in. Miro Noir begins and stops as Vernon puts a finger to her lips. Those that enter in peace will always be welcome. The house I'm building here for myself will have more than enough room for you as well. Besides, who better to teach young Apuk about war fire and Apuk war making than a battle princess? Vernon asks, and Miro Noir smiles before giving his finger a slight kiss. I'd rather that be a little higher up. Can you two cool it for 5 minutes? Koga complains from nearby and is given a dismissive wave by the kissing couple in response.